Imagine being on your way to work minding your own business when suddenly you're surrounded by a pack of wild, hungry dogs. You reach for your phone, desperately calling for help, but the person on the other end can't understand you. The line goes dead. This is the terrifying true story of Zhanna Kusayanova, a loving mother whose final moments were filled with terror as she tried to escape a brutal attack that no one could have ever imagined. Before we dive into this gripping story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And this story is one you won't want to miss. Zhanna Kusayanova was a woman like any other, dedicated to her family, hardworking, and doing her best to provide a good life for her daughter. At 48 years old, she was a trained aviation engineer, but had taken up a job at a local supermarket to make ends meet in the city of Kazan, Russia. And every morning, she would follow the same route to work, a path that took her past a desolate patch of wasteland, an area that many locals avoided if they could. But Zhanna had no choice. It was the quickest way to her job, and like so many others, she had grown used to taking risks to keep her life on track. But on that cold, dark morning, something horrific was waiting for her. It was just past 6 a.m. when Zhanna left her apartment, dressed in her dark green jacket and carrying her brown handbag. Security cameras along the way captured her hurrying down the street, her breath visible in the chilly morning air. So everything seemed normal, but as she reached the edge of the industrial area, something changed. Seconds after passing out of the camera's view, a distant sound of barking echoed through the empty streets. What had started as a routine walk to work was about to turn into a nightmare. Dozens of stray dogs, living in a makeshift shelter near an abandoned industrial site, had spotted her. These dogs weren't like the friendly pets you might see in a park. They were wild, starving, and desperate. See, in recent months, the city had been struggling with an influx of stray dogs, abandoned pets, and feral dogs that had formed packs. Local residents had been complaining about the increasing number of strays, but their cries for help had gone unanswered. Zhanna was about to pay the price for that oversight. As the pack closed in on her, Zhanna did the only thing she could think of. She pulled out her phone and dialed emergency services. With panic in her voice, she tried to explain what was happening. "Dogs are attacking me," she gasped, her breath coming in short, desperate bursts. But the line was bad. The operator, struggling to understand her, thought she was reporting a fire. "What's burning? Is the sauna on fire?" they asked, clearly confused. Zhanna's voice grew more frantic as the barking got louder in the background. "No. Dogs, they are attacking me. There are so many. Help. Please," she cried, her voice breaking. But before she could provide her exact location, the line went dead. It was the last call she would ever make. Back at the emergency call center, the operator was left confused and unsure of what had just happened. By the time they realized the gravity of the situation, precious minutes had been lost. Hours later, when Zhanna failed to show up for her shift at the supermarket, her co-workers grew worried. But it wasn't like her to miss work without a call. As the day turned to dusk, they alerted the authorities, who began searching for her. But by then, it was too late. Zhanna's body was found in a patch of wasteland, hidden behind overgrown bushes and scattered debris. The sight was horrifying. She was covered in bite marks, her clothes torn to shreds, and her body mangled almost beyond recognition. One leg had been completely severed and her scalp was missing. It was clear that she had fought for her life until the very end, but against a pack of feral dogs, there was little she could do. The forensic team pieced together the events as best they could. It appeared that Zhanna had dropped her phone while trying to flee, and the dogs had quickly overpowered her. The scene was a grim testament to her final, desperate moments. The news of Zhanna's death spread quickly through the city, sending shockwaves through the community. Friends and neighbors couldn't believe that something so horrific had happened in their own backyard. But her 15-year-old daughter was left devastated, her life forever changed by the brutal loss of her mother. But the horror didn't stop there. As more details emerged, the public learned that locals had been warning city officials about the stray dogs for months. Complaints had been filed, petitions had been signed, but nothing had been done. Dogs that attacked Jana were part of a pack that had been living in a makeshift shelter near the industrial site, a shelter that had been ignored by authorities despite numerous reports of aggressive behavior. Deputy Mayor Iskander Jinyatulin addressed the public, urging calm and patience while the investigation unfolded. "So I believe it is necessary to maintain composure and wait for the results of the investigation," he said. But for many, his words rang hollow. The city had failed to protect its citizens, and now an innocent woman was dead. In the aftermath of Zana's death, the city took swift action. The dogs suspected of attacking her were rounded up and put down, sparking further controversy. Some residents felt relief, while others protested, arguing that the animals were victims of neglect and poor management. But for Jana's daughter, no amount of public debate or policy changes could bring her mother back. She was left with only memories and the haunting knowledge that her mother's last moments had been filled with terror and pain. If Jana's tragic story moved you, please take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video to raise awareness about the dangers of neglect and the need for better community safety measures. Now, your support helps us continue to bring you stories that matter. And remember, no one should have to face such a terrifying fate alone. Let's work together to ensure this never happens again. The city of Kazan was in turmoil. Jana Kusinova's death had opened a Pandora's box of issues that authorities could no longer ignore. The brutal attack had struck a nerve with citizens who had long been frustrated with the growing stray dog problem, and now everyone was demanding answers. So within days following Jana's tragic death, the authorities launched a full-scale investigation into the incident. The streets where she had been attacked were cordoned off, and investigators scoured the area for evidence. They found her brown handbag, torn and covered in dirt, just a few meters away from where her body was discovered. Her phone was recovered nearby, its screen shattered, likely from being dropped during her desperate attempt to flee. Police questioned local residents who had reported stray dogs near the industrial site for months. Many had filed complaints, but the city officials had failed to take action, citing a lack of resources. Now, with Jana's death making headlines, the authorities were scrambling to cover their tracks. Forensic experts examined the bite marks on her body, concluding that the attack had been carried out by at least a dozen dogs, likely driven by hunger. The investigation also revealed something even more disturbing. Several of the dogs had been previously reported to local shelters, but they had somehow been released or escaped due to overcrowding and underfunding. So the city's animal control department came under heavy fire. How had these aggressive dogs been allowed to roam free? And why hadn't the authorities acted sooner, especially when the residents' complaints were so well documented? While the investigation was underway, Xana's family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Her 15-year-old daughter, Natalia, was especially devastated. Jana had been a single mother, working tirelessly to support her daughter and provide her with a stable life. Now, Natalia was left alone, trying to make sense of a world that had taken her mother away so violently. Local reporters gathered outside their small apartment, hoping for a statement. Finally, after days of silence, Natalia stood on the steps of her home, holding a framed photo of her mother. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with a pain that no child should have to bear. "My mother was the kindest, most hardworking person I knew," Natalia said, her voice breaking slightly. "She didn't deserve to die like this. She was just trying to get to work, just like she did every day. And now she's gone because no one cared enough to do something about those dogs. But I just hope no one else has to go through what we are going through." The brief statement went viral, sparking outrage across social media. Thousands of people shared Natalia's words, calling for immediate action to address the stray dog problem in Kazan and other cities facing similar issues. Deputy Mayor Iskander Jinyatulin who had initially urged patience while the investigation unfolded, now found himself in hot water. The public was no longer willing to wait for bureaucratic red tape. They wanted action, and they wanted it now. City officials were pressured to make a statement, but every word was met with skepticism. Residents were tired of empty promises. The outrage to boiling point when new reports revealed that just months before Jana's death, a 12-year-old girl had also been mauled by a pack of strays in a nearby village. The authorities had known about the problem but had failed to take substantial action. So amid the chaos, high-ranking officials in Moscow began to take notice. With the story gaining traction nationwide, the Kremlin could not afford to ignore the growing discontent. In an effort to control the narrative, a senior MP, Fedot Tumozov, proposed a controversial plan utilizing aggressive strays for military purposes, such as mine-clearing operations in Ukraine. Why let these dangerous animals roam our streets when we can put them to good use in the war zone? Tumozov argued on state television. We have the resources to train them, and they can be valuable assets in the fight for our country. The suggestion sparked immediate backlash. Animal rights activists condemned the idea as inhumane, while others saw it as a grotesque exploitation of a tragic situation. But for families like Zana's, it was just another reminder of how little the authorities cared about their safety. As more details about Zana's final moments came to light, the public's outrage only grew. A local news outlet obtained a copy of the chilling 911 call she had made just moments before the dogs overpowered her. The recording was heartbreaking. Jana's voice was filled with panic as she pleaded for help, her cries growing more desperate as the barking grew louder in the background. The dispatcher's confusion over the bad connection was evident. What's burning? Is it a fire? The operator kept asking, while Zana's voice was barely audible through the static. No dogs, they are attacking me. Help, she cried, and then, abruptly, the call went silent. The recording was played on national television, bringing Jana's terror into millions of homes. Viewers were horrified, and the story quickly became a symbol of the government's failure to protect its citizens. Under immense pressure, the city of Kazan took drastic measures to address the stray dog problem. In the days following Jana's death, animal control units were dispatched to round up the strays, and within a week, hundreds of dogs were captured. Some were taken to overcrowded shelters, but many were euthanized, sparking protests from animal rights groups. On the other hand, some residents expressed relief, believing that something was finally being done to make their city safer. But for others, it felt like too little, too late. Natalia, still grieving the loss of her mother, was horrified by the city's sudden crackdown. Killing these animals won't bring my mom back, she told reporters. This problem should have been dealt with a long time ago. To now, they're just trying to save face. Jana's tragic death became a rallying cry for change in Kazan and beyond. Citizens began organizing protests, demanding better funding for animal control services, stricter regulations for shelters, and accountability from local officials. Hashtags like Justice for Jana and Stop the Strays began trending on social media, uniting people from all over Russia in their call for reform. At a candlelight vigil held in Jana's honor, hundreds gathered with flowers and signs, lighting candles as a tribute to her life. Natalia stood in the crowd, surrounded by friends and strangers alike who had come to show their support. So this isn't just about my mother, she said to the crowd. It's about all of us. No one should have to die because of negligence and indifference. The community's outpouring of support gave Natalia a new sense of purpose. With the help of a local lawyer, she began advocating for stricter laws to protect citizens from dangerous strays. She wanted to make sure that no other family would have to endure the nightmare she had faced. Despite the public outcry, real change was slow to come. The city promised to allocate more resources to animal control, but with funding stretched thin due to the ongoing war, many were skeptical that anything would actually change. Jana's death may have sparked a temporary wave of action, but the underlying problems remained. As winter set in, the stray dog packs grew bolder, their hunger driving them closer to residential areas in search of food. The authorities' response was inconsistent. Some towns saw aggressive culling, while others continued to struggle with growing stray populations. But Natalia was determined to keep fighting. She refused to let her mother's death be in vain. With the support of activists, she began a petition demanding comprehensive reform, gathering thousands of signatures. The movement she started was small, but it was growing, and she was hopeful that one day they would see real change. Months after Jana's death, her story still haunted the city of Kazan. The stray dog crisis was far from over, but there was a glimmer of hope as more citizens began to push for change. Natalia's campaign gained momentum, forcing local officials to take action, albeit slowly. For Natalia, every day was a battle, but with each step forward, she knew she was honoring her mother's memory. Jana had been taken too soon, but her death had sparked a movement that was bringing people together. And in that unity, there was a chance for a safer future. Jana's story serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of neglect, both for the animals abandoned to the streets and the people who are left to deal with the consequences. It's a story of loss, of injustice, but also of resilience. And as Natalia continues her fight, she carries her mother's spirit with her, determined to make sure that no one else has to experience the heartbreak she did. If Jana's tragic story moved you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story with others. Let's raise awareness about the consequences of negligence and fight for safer communities. Together we can make a difference. Leave a comment below if you believe more needs to be done to protect people from the dangers of stray animals.